Hi, it's Christmas Carla. I am going to read some stories to you. We're going to start with Christmas Through a Knothole. If you're Carter and Leah, it's Aunt Carla instead of Christmas Carla. Christmas Through a Knothole by Katherine Gibson. Old Hans was the best wood carver in all the land, but just 3 weeks before Christmas, he was thrown into jail. Again and again he had been told not to hunt in the king's own hunting ground, but Hans' mouth would water for the taste of roast rabbit, and to the king's lands he would go and set his traps. This time, alas, Hans was caught. The jailer was a kind man. Since Hans was old, he let him have a fire and some wood to carve. But Hans was very unhappy to be in jail on Christmas when all the village was making merry. Hans lived all alone, but he had a good friend named Gretchen. Gretchen was 7 years old and had big gray eyes and long smooth yellow hair and two pigtails. Gretchen also had a little brother named Max. He was as round and brown as she was pink and white. He was as naughty and full of laughter as she was quiet and thoughtful. "Oh, Max," Gretchen said to her brother, "what shall we do? Poor Uncle Hans is in jail just for hunting rabbits. He always has his Christmas dinner with us. Now he won't have any, not a bite." "And worse than that," said Max, "we won't get any toys." For every year, of course, old Hans carved the most wonderful toys for them. Max looked cross and Gretchen looked sad. They walked past the jail. Like all the other houses in the village, it was made of wood. The walls were very thick, and the only window was far, far above their heads. Suddenly Max said, "Look, there is a knothole." It was a large knothole in the wood. Max stood on his tiptoes and put his eye to the hole. "I can see him! I can see old Hans! He is carving just the way he always does." "Oh, Max, let me see!" cried Gretchen. She bent down, and sure enough, she could see old Hans, or part of him. Max took out his pocket knife. Every boy in the village carried a knife, and scratched at the hole until he made it bigger. Then he put his lips to the hole and called, "Hans, Uncle Hans, come here! Come to the knothole!" Old Hans was surprised. He got up and followed the sound of the excited small voice. The children told him all the village news. In turn, he told them how long the days were in jail. So here's a picture of old Hans, and here's the children looking through the knothole. "It will be a sad Christmas for you, Uncle Hans," said Gretchen. "We will miss you at home. For us it will be even worse." Max was almost crying. "We won't have any toys, not one." "You come back here tomorrow," Uncle Hans said. The children could hardly wait for the next day. In the morning they hurried back to the knothole. Here we are, Uncle Hans," they said. The knothole was bigger now. Out of it Uncle Hans pushed a tiny wooden figure. It was a little boy carrying a flower in his hand. "Oh," cried Max, "it is just like me." "Only you could never carry flowers," said Gretchen. "You just carry big sticks." The next day a fat duck came through the knothole. Then a market woman. "Why," said Gretchen, "that is old Martha." Day after day the tiny carved figures came through the knothole. At last the children had a whole village, and not one toy was more than 3 inches high. "Uncle Hans has done so much for us," said Gretchen. "I wonder, can we make him a knothole Christmas dinner?" They talked with their mother, and this is what they did. They wrapped some fine pieces of roast goose into long, thin bundles, 4 of them. They took some long, thin sausages that Hans liked ever so much. Gretchen baked some rolls. They were a funny shape, not very different from the sausages, long and thin. Even with Christmas cakes were rolled up tight with sugar and nuts inside. And a tall, thin candle, a Christmas candle. "I will make it myself," said Max. And he did. So here's the little sleepy village. It's covered with snow. Christmas Eve came. There was snow on the pointed roofs of the houses and on the pointed tops of the fir trees. Just as the lights were lit, Max and Gretchen went to the jail. They called old Hans. He came and gave them the prettiest toy of all. It was a funny, fat little fellow with a star on his head, a Christmas angel. Then Max pushed and Gretchen pushed, and soon Hans' Christmas dinner was inside the jail. Last of all, Max pushed through the candle. "Made it myself," he said proudly, jumping up and down. The children said they had never had such toys, never, and they loved them because they were so tiny. And Hans said the best dinner he ever had was the Christmas dinner through a knothole. Here's a picture of the toys that Uncle Hans made for the children. And that's the end.